Okay, so it doesn't go.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
Allah.
so in the economic
Allah.
sphere,
Okay.
when it comes to, so here we are talking about political things like voting rights and rights for women. They did not have enough rights. They had to be represented by their father or husband. But when it comes to economic sphere, then liberalism, it stood for freedom of markets and abolition of any kind of restrictions from the state, from the government, on restrictions on movement of goods or capital. So they wanted a free economy where people could easily do business, because a commercial class had come up, right?
Yep.
So during the 19th century, this was a strong demand of the emerging middle classes. So middle class, we are talking of aristocracy and the middle class. So middle class is becoming more and more commercial. It requires free trade and fewer restrictions economically. And for example, let us take the example of German-speaking regions in the first of the 19th century. Napoleon's administrative measures had created, out of countless small principalities, a confederation of 39 states. Okay, so in Germany, what had happened was, in the German-speaking regions under Napoleon's administrative, because under his administration, Germany had been converted into 39 states.
There were originally many different broken down principalities.
Yes.
And when Napoleon came, he grouped those principalities into 39 states.
Correct. And each of these possess its own currency and weights and measures. And when in 1833, when a merchant would travel from Hamburg to Nuremberg to sell his goods, he would have to pass through 11 custom barriers.
Oof.
And pay a lot of custom duty of about 5% at each of them. And also the duties were often levied according to the weight or measurement of the goods.
And
so
obviously that varied, as it says each state had its own
exactly,
currency and measures.
it's coming here.
I see.
So if you were carrying more goods, you had to pay more tax. It's not only that you are paying only 5% on each item. So duties were levied, and if you're carrying more stuff, then you were paying more duties at each of these custom barriers. And as each region had its own system of weights and measures, this involved time consuming calculations. So because if I say my kilogram has 800 grams, and your 1 kilo, if my 1 kilo has 800 grams and your 1 kilo has 1200 grams, then if you are passing from my territory, and if you are selling your stuff in my territory, then there has to be a conversion, there has to be some standardization that has to take place, right? Without standardization, the trade will be difficult. So it was a time consuming activity. The measure of cloth, for example, was the L, which in each region stood for a different length. So an L of textile material brought in Frankfurt, Germany, would get you 54.7 centimeters of cloth. In Mainz, 55.1 centimeter. In Nuremberg, 65. So, I mean, one measure that for textile L, it was not uniform, right? So such conditions were viewed as obstacles to economic exchange and growth by the new commercial classes, who argued for creation of a unified economic territory, allowing the unhindered movement of goods, people, and capital. So this middle class, the commercial class, they wanted a unified economic territory without any hindrances or restrictions to the movement of goods and people, laborers, and capital. And in 1834, a customs union, Zollverein, was formed. Okay, in Germany in 1834, a customs union was formed, like we have the European Union in the entire Europe now. and there it was formed by by the initiative of Prussia. Prussia was, a big area, kind of a province in Germany. Is it given here? Let me see. Yes, Prussia was historically prominent German state that originated in 1525 with the duchy centered on the region of Prussia on the southeastern coast of Baltic Sea. So Prussia was in Germany, and Prussia took the initiative, and it was joined by most of the German states. What happened? The Union abolished tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to only 2 currencies. Like we have the European Union
Euro.
currency, which is a euro now, only single. So they had a similar thing back then in 1834 also, when they formed a customs union called Zollverein, okay, where more than 30 currencies were reduced to 2 currencies only. Okay, the creation of a network of railways further stimulated mobility. So they created railways, so it helped them in mobility and harnessing economic interest to national unification. So you see what is happening? National unification is happening. The feeling of nationalism or the concept of nationalism is coming through economic freedom.
Yeah.
So because the middle class is benefiting from this arrangement, Zollverein, where there is free trade and fewer restrictions. So this economic prosperity or the ease of doing trade was creating the feeling of nationalism amongst them. A wave of economic nationalism strengthened the wider nationalist sentiments growing at the time.
Yeah.
So let us see this box here. This box is there was a box at the top also, right? Okay, this is only a timeline which we can always come back to, don't worry. So economists began to think in terms of the national economy. Okay, they started thinking in the terms of the national economy. They talked of how the nation could develop and what economic measures could help force this nation together. How they can become a strong nation with a strong national economy. So Frederick List, he was a professor of economics at University of Tübingen in Germany. In 1834 he wrote, the aim of the Zollverein, as is given here, the aim of the Zollverein is to bind the Germans economically into a nation. They were very small states. They wanted to come together as a nation economically. It will strengthen the nation materially as much by protecting its interests externally as by stimulating its internal productivity. So it will strengthen the nation materially and protect it externally, and internally the productivity will increase, right? And it ought to awaken and raise national sentiment through a fusion of individual and provincial interests. So individual interests, capitalism, working for yourself for the betterment of for financial stability of yourself, of your family, and also the provincial interest, because if everyone is doing good business, the province is becoming a strong province. And the German people have realized that a free economic system is the only means to engender national feeling. So there will be a national feeling if economic nationalism came. So here the question is, describe the political ends that Professor Frederick List hopes to achieve through economic measurement. So here is the answer. What is the political end? The political end is that national sentiment will develop through a fusion of individual and provincial interest, and German people will have the national feeling.
It will bring people together, basically. It's going to unify the people,
right,
of the place of the nation.
Okay, then after so we saw that how the liberal nationalism, what liberal nationalism stood for, and so we are talking of aristocracy and the new middle class. The new middle class was becoming commercial, and they wanted more economic freedom. But there was another class, conservatives. They were called the new conservatism. So conservatives, they did not want so much of liberalism. They wanted that we go back to monarchy. So what is conservatism? First of all, it is a political philosophy that stresses the importance of tradition, and it established institutions and customs and preferred gradual development to quick change.
So basically, they were kind of resistant to the idea of change. They didn't want to really budge from, for example, in this case, we're talking about monarchies. They said that we should still respect the ways of the olden times, and they weren't like very radical. So yeah, they didn't
So-
want to budge basically.
No, they wanted change, but they said that it should
Take
not
it
be
slow,
so
yeah.
sudden.
It shouldn't be so sudden. Take the change and bring it about slowly, so
Ye-
that
Yes, and don't give up your traditions and establish institutions and customs, and the change should be gradual. So, following the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, European governments were driven by the spirit of conservatism. Conservatism believed that established traditional institutions of state and society, like the monarchy, the church, social hierarchies, property, and the family, should be preserved. Okay, don't give up tradition.
yeah.
This is okay. Most conservatives, however, did not propose a return to the society of pre-revolutionary days. They did not say that let us go back to the same setup as there was before the French Revolution, right? Pre-revolutionary days. Rather, they realized from the changes initiated by Napoleon that modernization could in fact strengthen traditional institutions like the monarchy. So they said that let us bring back monarchy, but don't give up modernization.
Yeah.
It could make state power more effective and strong. So they wanted to give some power to the people also,
Yeah.
and at the same time bring back monarchy, because monarchy earlier was totally absolutist.
Yeah.
But they wanted a new, the conservatives, they wanted a new, maybe a diluted form of monarchy, where monarchy as an institute will exist, and it will not be totally abolished.
But it won't be completely absolutist either.
Yes.
Yeah.
It could make state power more effective and strong. A modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom could strengthen the autocratic monarchies of Europe. So they would bring back the autocratic monarchies of Europe, but what they will do, they are going to have a modern army, okay,
Yeah.
and efficient bureaucracy and dynamic economy and abolition of serfdom and feudalism.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in 1815, representatives of the European powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. These were the powers who had defeated Napoleon, right?
At Waterloo, yeah.
Waterloo or
Yeah,
Leipzig?
No. Leipzig. He came back, right? He was finally defeated at Waterloo.
Hmm.
The Battle of Waterloo, yeah.
So he was in Leipzig also. The same powers were. He was fighting.
Yeah,
his
but
powers.
he was defeated, but then he retreated, and then he was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815.
Okay.
Because Leipzig was in 1813.
1813.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah, so these countries were fighting as one against Napoleon. So the representative of these countries, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Prussia is Germany, and Austria, they were collectively fighting. They collectively defeated Napoleon. They met at Vienna to draw a settlement for Europe. So the Vienna Convention happened here. The Congress was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich.
Metternich. Yeah.
Metternich. The delegates drew up the Treaty of Vienna of 1815. Treaty of Vienna was signed in 1815, which re-established a monarchy with the objective of undoing most of the changes that had come about in Europe during Napoleonic Wars. So, the Bourbon dynasty which had been deposed during the French Revolution, was restored to power. And France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. So Napoleon, he had captured some territories. He had won certain areas. So those areas, those territories were given back to those countries, and France did not have it with them anymore, according under the Treaty of Vienna, that was signed in 1815. And a series of states were set up on boundaries of France to prevent French expansion in future.
Yeah.
You getting this?
Yes.
So the Kingdom of Netherlands, which included Belgium, was set up in the north. Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south. Perugia was given important new territories on its western frontiers, while Austria was given control of northern Italy.
Yeah.
So what is happening around France? They are forming different territories, series of states, so that and these states were not under France anymore.
Yeah.
They went back to their own countries, so France would not be able to expand like in the Napoleonic time. But the German, yes, this one thing that they left untouched was the German Confederation of 39 states that Napoleon had created. Right?
Yeah.
German Confederation of 39 states were not changed. In the east, Russia was given part of Poland, while Prussia was given a portion of Saxony. The main mention was to the main intention was to restore the monarchies that had been overthrown by Napoleon and create a new conservative order in Europe. You getting this?
Yes.
Okay. Activity. Plot a map of Europe, the changes drawn up by the Vienna Congress.
So basically
we have to do this.
You have to basically draw up all the boundaries, basically.
Yeah, how all these countries, how these states
France.
were formed around France,
Yeah,
to prevent its
its expansion.
Right. Now, during the conservative regime, again, because they were getting back to monarchy, there was no freedom for people to speak, and it was becoming more and more autocratic. Okay, conservative regimes set up in 1815 were autocratic. They did not tolerate criticism and dissent. Anything against monarchies they were not willing to hear,
Yeah.
and sought to curb activities that questioned the legitimacy of autocratic governments. There was no freedom of speech, and people were not allowed to.
There were no rights.
No
Basically.
rights. Most of them imposed censorship laws. Censorship laws means you cannot say what you want. The press is not free.
Yeah, so basically you can only say what the king wants you to say.
Yes, most of them imposed censorship laws to control what was said in newspapers and books, plays and songs, and it reflected the ideas of liberty and freedom. Liberty and freedom associated with the French Revolution. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Was important. So they basically controlled what was said by people. So yeah.
yes. So this picture as what is the caricature trying to depict? So we have this picture which was a painting which was made by someone, an anonymous caricature dating to 1820. So it is a club of thinkers. So here is a plaque, and there is something written here, and they have muzzles on their faces. Muzzles. They have muzzles on their faces. So what does the plaque say? On the left bears the inscription: "The most important question of today's meeting: how long will thinking be allowed to us?" Means they are not allowed to speak at all. Then another restriction is going to come. They can't even continue thinking on their own. Right?
Yeah, it's basically a sarcastic reference to like the amount of repression, censorship, and lack of rights that the monarchies have brought back.
Right. And the board on the right list says silence is the first commandment of this learned society, and to avoid eventuality whereby a member of this club may succumb to the temptation of speech. So if you can't hold your temptation to speak, then you will be given muzzles to shut up your mouth, to keep your mouth
Yeah.
closed.
To hold your tongue.
Okay, to hold your tongue, right? So the memory of the French Revolution nonetheless continued to inspire liberals, right? Conservatives were there, okay, there was a new class that came, but
Yeah.
liberals were also there. The liberal nationalists who wanted freedom, who wanted
Rights.
the rights, who
Wanted
wanted abolition of monarchy. So a revolution happened, right? The memory of French Revolution nonetheless continued to inspire liberals. One of the major issues taken up by the liberal nationalists who criticized the new conservative order was freedom of the press.
Again, censorship.
Censorship, right? So now we talk about the revolutionaries. Who were the revolutionaries? These were the people who were the liberal nationalists. They want liberalism and nationalism, and they did not support conservatism and monarchies. So during the years following 1815, the fear of repression drove many liberal nationals underground, right? Because conservatives, they were coming into power, the monarchy, the Vienna Convention had finished everything that Napoleon Bonaparte, where is it?
The Vienna Convention.
Yes, here.
Right here.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Treaty of Vienna. The Treaty of Vienna had re-established monarchy, and
Had taken away the ideals of the French Revolution that people had fought for, and a lot of people didn't like that,
And-
so they
yes, even the
spoke-
territories that France had won, they were given back to their
exactly
respective countries.
owners
Countries.
or countries. Yes.
So the liberal nationalists, they had to go underground, right? The liberal nationalists. Why? Because of fear of repression. They thought that they would be repressed. So secret societies came up in many European states to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas, right?
Yeah.
So secret societies came up. They wanted to talk about liberalism again and an end to monarchy. To be revolutionary at this time meant a commitment to oppose monarchical forms that had been established after the Vienna Congress, and to fight for liberty and freedom. So if you want to be a revolutionist, you have to oppose monarchical
Monarchies.
form and the Vienna Treaty of Vienna signed in 1815, and fight for liberty and freedom. And most of these revolutionaries also saw the creation of nation states as a necessary part of this struggle for freedom. So they wanted nation states like we have today, that nation states where plebiscite is happening, as we read
Yeah.
above, and people are electing the government, and there are equal rights, and there are no privileges, clerical privileges for lords and kings, people. So one such individual was the Italian revolutionary
Giuseppe
Mazzini. Here
Mazzini.
he is sitting here, and Giuseppe Mazzini, and the founding of Young Europe in Bern,
1833.
1833.
Print by
Printing,
Giacomo
Giacomo.
Mantegazza.
Okay.
Mantegazza.
So Giuseppe Mazzini, he was born in Genoa in 1807, and he became the member of the secret society of Carbonari. He was 24 years old only, and he was sent into exile in 1831. Okay, 15 years after the Treaty of Vienna was formed.
Yeah.
Was signed. So he was sent into exile in 1831 for attempting a revolution in Liguria. While he was in prison, he founded two more underground societies. The Young Italy in Marseille, and then Young Europe in Bern, whose members were like-minded young men from Poland, France, Italy, and German states. Mazzini believed that God had intended nations to be the natural unit of mankind. So nations, nation would be the natural unit of mankind
Yeah.
and not monarchies. So Italy could not continue to be a patchwork of small states and kingdoms. Okay, it will not be
A broken up,
country.
divided territory.
Right. It had to be forged into a single unified republic within a wider alliance of nations. So his idea as a liberal nationalist was that it would be a single unified republic.
Yes.
This unification alone could be the basis of Italian liberty. So Italy will be liberated if only if this unification happened. So following his model, secret societies were set up in Germany, like Jacobin clubs were earlier formed at the time during the time of Napoleon, like the French Revolution. Now again, secret societies were forming in Germany, France, Switzerland, Poland, and Mazzini his relentless opposition to monarchy and his vision of democratic republics frightened the conservatives. The conservatives were getting alarmed by
his radical revolutionary ideas,
and the idea was getting spread so fast in Germany, France, all these places. Yes. So Metternich described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order.
Yep.
Okay. Now the revolutions start again. The age
These European people were really indecisive before. They're having revolutions every like 15 years.
Yeah, but, I mean, different groups are like getting into power, battling it out. Yes, and so it's a tussle going on between people, because monarchies were ruling for centuries, right?
Yeah.
And then the French Revolution happened, but monarchies were not a small something that could be just brushed aside. They resurrected. They got back into power through conservatism, and now the liberal nationalists, the nationalists again, they want to suppress them, and they want to overpower them, right? So that's why the tussle is happening between monarchy and people who want freedom from them and equal rights. So the age of revolution from 1830 to 1848. This is an interesting era, and we will see. No, not tomorrow. We'll just finish it. It's not much. Where we are, 12. This will go fast. So, the age of revolutions, 1830 to 1848. As conservatism regimes tried to consolidate their power, liberalism and nationalism came to be increasingly associated with the revolution in many regions of Europe, such as Italian and German states, the provinces of Ottoman Empire, Ireland, and Poland. So, the liberal nationalists, or the revolutionists, as you can call them now, because they were going against the conservatives, they were grouping up in Italy, Germany, and in provinces of Ottoman Empire and Ireland and Poland. These revolutions were led by the liberal nationalists belonging to the educated middle class. Now, what is happening? On one side, the revolutionists are grouping up. On the other side,
the conservatives.
No. The revolutionists were led by the liberal nationalists belonging to the the liberal nationalists, all the revolutionists, they belonged to the educated middle class elite, among whom were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of the commercial middle class. So these revolutions were led by these people, because they were educated people, and they were in the middle class, and they had seen the time when the economic nationalism came through in Germany especially, and where they reduced 30 countries to only 2 currencies, and they started doing well. So they were the middle class, the commercial middle class, which also included educated people. So the liberal nationalists were up against the conservatives, and they were led by middle class and educated people. The first upheaval, it came in July 1830 in France. July 1830, Bourbon kings, they were overthrown. Bourbon kings who were restored to power during the conservatives' reaction after 1815, were now overthrown by liberal national. Now, who were Bourbon kings? You can see here, Bourbon kings first ruled France and Navarre in the 16th century. Louis XVI was the last Bourbon king of France. He was executed in 1793 for treason. In 1770, now this is long back. Okay, we are talking about
We're talking about 1830. Louis the 16th.
Let us scroll. Let us skip all this and come straight to Louis Philippe, because Louis Philippe, he was the king of France from 1830 to 1848. He was proclaimed king in 1830 after his cousin Charles was forced to abdicate. So,
in the July Revolution.
yes. So what happened was that the Bourbon king, who had been restored to power during the conservative
which
reaction,
was Charles X, was forced to abdicate in July, and Louis Philippe was the new king, which
Yes.
was they installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe at its head.
right. So the Bourbon kings they were restored to power in 1815 through the Treaty of Vienna. They were now overthrown by the liberal revolutionaries, and the liberal revolutionaries, they brought back they put Louis Philippe as the king of the constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
When France, so that is why Metternich says when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. So it had a domino effect. When monarchy came down in France at this time in 1830, during the July, this is called the July Revolution.
Yeah.
In France in 1830, when monarchy came down in July 1830, the same thing happened in other parts of Europe as well. An uprising in Brussels, which led to Belgium breaking away from United Kingdom of the Netherlands. So Belgium, an uprising happened in Brussels, and Belgium broke away from United Kingdom of the Netherlands. An event that mobilized nationalist feelings among the educated elite across Europe was Greek War of Independence. Greek, they were under the Ottoman Empire, right? So, the educated elite, the educated class, they got the feeling of nationalism, nationalist feelings through the Greek War of Independence. What had happened was that Greece had been a part of Ottoman Empire since the 15th century.
That's quite old.
Right. The growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe sparked off a struggle for independence among the Greek, which began in 1821. Okay.
Yeah.
So revolutionary nationalism, when it was growing in Europe, it had an effect, and it started the struggle for independence of Greece, okay, which began in 1821. The growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe sparked off a struggle for. Okay. Now, nationalists in Greece got support from other Greeks living in exile. And are you tired?
No, I'm good.
We'll just finish this. Nationalists in Greece these people, the nationalists in Greece, they were getting support from other Greeks who were living in exile. Why living in exile? Because
they dared to oppose the Ottoman Empire.
Yes, Ottoman Empire did not. They had to run away from the Ottoman Empire, and also from Western Europe. People thought that Greek was a kind of a cradle for European culture.
I mean, considering all of their, they had so many great thinkers. They had
philosophers.
Philosophers.
Artists.
Their mythology, their books, everything was
Poets
so
and
rich.
artists. Yes. So Greece poets and artists. Western Europe thought that Greece was a rich civilization, rich country, and it represented Europe's civilization, and that is why the public opinion was mobilized against the Ottoman Empire, and they did not want and they did not want the Ottoman Empire to continue, its rule on Greece.
Yeah.
The English poet Lord Byron, he organized funds and later went to fight in the war, where he died in 1924. And then
1824.
1824, did I say 1924?
Yes.
1824. So then the Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832, which gave independence to Greece. Right?
Yeah.
So far what we have seen two types of, rather three types of nationalism. One is liberal nationalism.
Yeah.
First we saw the nationalism where you have to have a, glorious past and
Yeah,
together
yeah.
collectively. Second, we saw that there was liberal nationalism, which was also, personal, individual
Yeah.
growth as well as the growth of the nation, where we saw the economic nationalism also as a part of liberal nationalism,
Yeah.
where the individual growth is also a important part
Capitalism.
of important part of nationalism. And then we saw conservatism, where monarchy, they try to get
Brought it
back
back.
into power, saying that okay, we want change, all right, but we don't want change so fast. And then we saw that the liberal nationalists came back to power. So
Yeah.
these were the different versions of nationalism: conservatism, liberal nationalism, economic nationalism, and nationalism in the original state that we saw
Yeah.
they started with. Now there is another form of nationalism, which is romantic nationalism.
What the heck?
Yeah, romantic. Romantic is like, that the feeling of nationalism will come through your art.
Compassion to other people.
No, not compassion. Your art, your stories, your music, your dances, your culture, your foods, right?
Okay.
That is going to create. Oh, we eat biryani and kebab. Oh, you also eat biryani and kebab. Oh, come. Yes. Okay, our music. And so the development of nationalism did not come about only through wars and territorial expansion, as we saw before.
Exactly.
The culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation and developing the feeling of nationalism.
Yeah.
So art and poetry, stories and music helped express and shape nationalist feelings. So let us look at Romanticism, a cultural movement which sought to develop particular form of nationalist sentiments. So how Romanticism developed national sentiment, we'll just see here quickly. Romantic artists and poets, yes, generally criticize a glorification of reason and science. They did not say, okay, reason and science is all everything. They said, no. Emotions are important, intuition is important, mystical feelings are important. And in this picture, as you can see here, Eugene Delacroix in 1824, he yes, you can come. The video is not on. 15 minutes. So here we see this picture where the Ottoman Empire, this is the soldier from the Ottoman Empire, and he is attacking the Greeks. And a lot of in this picture, this guy is showing massacre at Chios. Chios is in on the island of Chios, Greek. So these Greeks are being killed. So in this picture, in this painting, he's showing that 20,000 Greeks. He exaggerated. The French painter Delacroix was one of the most important French romantic painter. His huge painting, it is almost like 5 meters or 4.19 meters by 3.54 meters. So
It's almost like 25 meters square.
5 by
basically.
5, yeah, depicts, yes, 25 meters square, depicts an incident in which 20,000 Greeks were said to have been killed by Turks on the island of Chios. By dramatizing and exaggerating the incident, he focusing on the suffering of women and children, using vivid colors, he got the emotions of people evoked, the spectators evoked, which got sympathy for the Greeks. And ultimately they got sympathy and help from Western Europe and other people, other classes, which led to the struggle for freedom of Greeks. And ultimately the Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832, which gave
Yes.
independence to Greece. So, here we are talking of Romanticism. Romanticism as a form of nationalism, where you have you develop a feeling of nationalism through your poetry and art and culture, and so these things.
Intuition, emotions,
In-
etc. Mystical feelings.
Right. Their effort was to create a sense of shared collective heritage, a common cultural past, and the basis of a
As the
nation.
basis of the nation.
As a basis. Now, other romantics such as German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, he claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among the people. That
Das
the
Volk.
people, das Volk. It was through folk songs, folk poetry, dances, and true spirit of nation.
Volksgeist.
Volksgeist was popularized. So he said that people, because in villages and in smaller areas, the kind of songs that they sing, the folk songs, the poetry, the folk dances, and the culture, that is actual nationalism. So collecting and recording these forms of folk culture was essential to the project of nation building. So as it happened, the Grimm brothers, they were basically the Grimm had a collection of Grimm's fairy tales. So they were the two brothers, Jacob Grimm and Wilhelm Grimm, and they were born here in 1785 and 1786 respectively.
In Hanau.
In Hanau, but they spent 6 years traveling from village to village. They spent 6 years traveling from village to village, and they collected fairy tales and also handed down
Stories.
through the generations and stories,
So
and they
basically
compiled it.
Yeah, they compiled a bunch of traditional bedtime stories.
In 1812, they published their first collection of tales, and both the brothers became active in liberal politics, especially the movement for freedom of press. In the meantime, they also published 33-volume dictionary of the German language. So why? Because this is a part of Romanticism, that your heritage, your folk tales, your things that have been passed from generation to generation, they form the feeling of nationalism. And yes, they consider their projects of collecting folk tales and developing the German language as part of the wider effort to oppose French domination and create a German national identity, right? Yeah. So they used their own folk tales and languages and all to oppose French domination.
Yeah.
Because France was, forcing its idea of nationalism on the neighboring countries. So vernacular language also. Vernacular language is the language that you speak locally. As you can
Yeah.
see here, the local dialect, the vernacular language, and the collection of local folklore. So all these things, they became, they brought people together, and this was also because a lot of people were illiterate, so they did not know what is nationalism. So the idea of economic nationalism and monarchy and all could not bring them together. So illiterate people who speak local language and all, they could be brought together in this movement through folk tales and dances and culture. Okay, so this was especially so in the case of Poland, which had been partitioned at the end of the 18th century by great powers, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. So Poland no longer existed as an independent territory. Okay, national feelings were kept alive through music and language. What is this? Okay, Prussia again. So Karol Kropinski, for example, celebrated the national struggle through his operas and music and folk dances like
the
Polonaise and Mazurka.
Mazurka, yeah.
Mazurka, they became national symbols. And language also played an important role in developing nationalist sentiments. After Russia had occupied Poland, and they had imposed that everyone will speak Russian. In 1831, an armed rebellion, so Russian language was imposed in Poland. But when this, revolutions were happening by the liberal nationalists in 1831, an armed rebellion happened against Russian rule, but this rebellion was not successful. Russia crushed it, but as they defy as an act of defiance, they continued speaking. So Russia, as you say, the Russian language was imposed. So the Polish people, they continued speaking Polish in churches, and bishops and priests, they continued using these things. As a result, a large number of priests and bishops were put in jail. Why? Because they were speaking Polish and not Russian, or sent to Siberia by the Russian authorities as punishment for their refusal to preach in Russian. The use of Polish came to be seen as a symbol of struggle against Russian dominance. Okay. All right. So we wanted to finish this till 18, but anyways, we will just stop here and continue in the next lecture.